Good evening and a very warm welcome to one and all for attending this webinar on the topic Incident Response in Cybersecurity. I am Ruma Sareen from Jagran New Media, and I'm delighted to have you all with us today as we dive into a critical aspect of our ever-evolving digital world. Cybersecurity, it is not just a buzzword anymore, it's a necessity. And today we are fortunate to have an esteemed guest speaker who is a true expert in the field of cybersecurity. Please welcome Mr. Vijayashankar, popularly known as Navi in the cyberspace. He specializes in consultancy related to regulatory compliance in the areas of GDPR, CCPA, DPDPA, and more. He is also a registered independent director with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. He has nearly 50 years of domain expertise and is a visiting faculty at the National Law School, Bangalore, and the National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, Hyderabad. He has authored several books, including the first book on cyber laws in India in 1999 to mark the beginning of a new era of data protection in India. He is also the founder and secretary of the Cyber Society of India. We encourage you all to actively engage with our guest speaker. If you have any questions, please share them in the chat. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, let's begin today's session. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. We are eager to learn from your expertise.
Okay, good evening, friends. I hope there are a few teachers also here from various education institutions. I hope we will be having a lot of questions on the topic. Okay. Now, when we talk of a cyber incident, okay, in the cyber security domain, we look at, say, failure of security. If you consider security as preserving the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information, anything which leads to unauthorized access of information will be considered as a breach of security. When you look at the same incident from the legal perspective, any unauthorized access is also recognized as a cyber crime. Of course, in cyber laws, we make a small distinction between those contraventions of the law which provide a kind of ability for a victim of the contravention who suffers a loss to somehow recover the financial loss which he has suffered. This is called a civil claim. The law also recognizes certain aspects of violation of law, which could result in imprisonment and collection of fine by the government. That is called the criminal offense. So, contravention of law can lead to both civil liabilities and criminal liabilities. So when we look at the incident, the impact of the incident is either the system owner or somebody else who has caused this incident to happen bear the responsibility for paying compensation or otherwise is open to some kind of a punishment in law. The law also recognizes that if there is a system and somebody hacks into the system or the unauthorized access or contravention is done by a third party, then the system owner is also expected to share some responsibility because it is his failure to secure unauthorized activities in the network which will actually result in a third party suffering a loss. This is what the security people call as the requirement of cyber security. Law looks at this as due diligence. That is, every system owner is expected to follow due diligence. The objective of due diligence is that the system is not used by anybody to create harm to others. So the concept of cybersecurity translates into due diligence in terms of law, and incidents which we normally recognize in the cybersecurity is translating into the contraventions of some cyber law provision. So this is one of the major differences we have to recognize when we look at cyber incidents, or particularly when you look at a corporate entity and then they say they have got an incident management system and they define incident in a particular way. In the cyber crime area, the definition of incident is directly related to contravention of law. And whatever the technology people talk about unauthorized access or modification or denying the access to an authorized person, they all are also covered in the law. Therefore, law is actually more comprehensive than the security prescription of what is an incident. So it is with this perspective that we will look at the cyber scams. Scam is, of course, another way of looking at a crime. Basically, we use the term scam when the crime actually affects a large number of people, and therefore a community gets affected. So there is a small difference between crime and scam, but we are using the word scam here. You can understand that a scam is a kind of an aggregation of multiple cyber crimes. So we will look at some kind of risks related to cyber scams, and then look at some solutions. So basically, we will try to first have a glance at the type of cyber scams which we come across. Actually, one of the most important aspects we have to remember is a term called phishing. Phishing and impersonation is one of the most important, say, reasons because of which several other offenses get committed. If you say cheating, phishing will lead to cheating, phishing will lead to harassment, phishing will lead to extortion. Then this may happen through either the websites or emails or phones. Now there is a new technology like AI which is coming up, and that is used to do voice cloning or deep fake. So phishing can be done with voice cloning or modified videos. Then there are scams which are called advance fee frauds. We'll look at what is advance fee frauds later. Then social engineering frauds, e-commerce related frauds, sextortion frauds, mobile app frauds. These are all different kinds of cyber security breaches which we may come across. We will also briefly discuss why scams succeed. Is it because of ignorance of the public who become victims? Or is it because of the greed to make a fast buck? Or is it because of the lack of ethics in the society? Education industry has to remember that what we sow, we reap. So today's youth who are committing this kind of crimes basically are products coming out of our educational system, where perhaps we would have failed to imbibe a sense of ethical, you can say, behavior. Of course, we are from a slightly earlier generation, but new generation is different. But people in the educational industry should remember that just as parents have a role to play in molding a human being, the schools and colleges, particularly the schools, have more responsibility in molding the character of a person. And today, if we are having a situation where fraud has become an industry, and our educated people who might have been a graduate, who might have done a BSc, who might have done a BA, who might have done even engineering. It surprises me when they go and join a fraud company and their daily work is to commit frauds. Okay. So how does it happen? It happens because people do not have any ethical attitude to life. Many times the parents would not even be aware that their children are working in a company which is actually committing frauds, which may be a call center fraud or something like that. So I would like the teaching community to keep this in the back of their mind. And when they look at some of these frauds, how does the psychology of indulging in fraud get developed in the students at an early stage needs to be looked at. It could be because of greed. It could be because people don't care. Ignorance is on the part of the victims. We cannot put all the blames on the victims because victims cannot prevent all crimes. If crimes could be prevented by us, then there is no need for a policing system in the country. So criminals exist, policing system exists, and if criminals succeed and police fail, then we have the victims. So many times we keep on telling that we have to create awareness, and because a person is not aware of the cyber crime, he is actually um, uh, falling a prey into it, and we actually make fun of people who are victims. Okay, and many times this leads to victims actually getting so frustrated and feel guilty that they even commit suicide. They are actually the victims, and in fact, the society should support them, but it does not always happen because the society tries to shift the blame for cyber crime to the victims rather than other people taking the responsibility. Now, one of the reasons why cyber crimes are a big threat today, and we are talking of whether India reaches 5 trillion GDP or not, it is possible that cyber crimes will reach 5 trillion, okay, very shortly, or it might have already crossed it. So that is the kind of situation which we are looking at. Basically, because technology is inherently imperfect in the sense that technology, when it is created, it is possible to actually misapply the technology and thereby commit frauds. And the technology companies have also developed their services in such a manner that they don't take responsibility for releasing a near perfect software. You must have heard of the term called zero-day vulnerability. What do we mean by zero-day vulnerability? It means that a software company has released a software, and from the 0 day, it has got a bug which can be exploited by a criminal, and because of that, somebody may actually lose money. Now, who should take the responsibility for that? Actually, the software supplier should take the responsibility for that. But it never happens like that. You all have heard that sometime back there was a major fraud in Punjab National Bank. 11,500 crores was siphoned off by one of the customers. And this happened because, of course, somebody in the bank was negligent or even fraudulent. They assisted the fraudster. Fraudster was outside. There was perhaps some assistance in the bank. Leaving that human angles aside, the technology enabled the fraudster to actually commit the fraud. Just without going into the details of technology, I will just say this was a case where the bank has a system called central banking system, CBS, okay, where all transactions are recorded. Now they have a service which is like sending an instruction to another bank saying that we have given a certain guarantee to some ex-client, and this is the guarantee document, and if you want you can finance against that. This issue of letters of guarantee in electronic form is done through a particular service. It is like your fixed deposit. Suppose the bank system raises a fixed deposit receipt. So, okay, you have got 50,000 rupees fixed deposit receipt. You may get it in the form of an email with an attachment or something like that. Now, the recipient of that thinks that he has got that money in the bank, and somebody else may actually give a loan against that. Now, when a bank issues an instrument like that, which acknowledges money in the bank, against which somebody else can actually give a loan, then that information has to be there in the banking system. In the case of Punjab National Bank fraud, what had happened was the system, which was called SWIFT system, which was for international financial transfer, was delinked from the CBS. And whenever a SWIFT message goes out that we have issued a letter of guarantee for company X for 100 crores, the central banking system did not recognize this particular transaction. It did not collect commission for that, which the bank was entitled to. It did not collect, let us say, the margin amount for that. So that is how the fraud happened. Now, I actually blame the technology supplier for putting together a technology which could delink the central banking system from its services and let this kind of frauds happen. This is where I say that technology suppliers are sometimes ignorant of the consequences of what their software can do, and also sometimes they themselves are greedy because they release a software before the final version is fully tested. Now, the intermediary service providers who act in between the ultimate user and this banking system or some other user system, they are many times negligent. And because of their negligence, actually people lose money. So instead of blaming all frauds and scams on the ignorance of the public and making fun of people, we need to actually flag that there are technology suppliers who are both ignorant and greedy and are perhaps malicious. And it is they who facilitate the scams, and innocent victims actually suffer. Therefore, the law has to recognize this and ensure that protection is given in that particular scenario. And criminals actually are better organized than security people. They are mutually cooperative. They are, of course, as tech savvy or better tech savvy than individual security people. In security, what happens? A company A security manager, company B security manager is there. Company A security manager may be an expert, but he will never share his knowledge with company B security manager. Whereas in the case of criminals, if a criminal X finds out a way of breaking into a particular system, he will immediately share that exploit in dark web, and others actually pick up that, improve upon that exploit and try to commit frauds. So therefore, there is better coordination and organization amongst criminals, and the people who are actually capable or should be responsible for security are not in the same way organized. So crime as a service is very, very common. Dark web is accessible to everyone. Extortion is actually a way of life for many. If you go to YouTube and look at some of these cyber criminals stories, many of them are very proud that they are leading a very luxurious life out of the frauds they commit every day. Okay, and some of them make lakhs of rupees in a single transaction, and they are enjoying, while the person who has lost this lakhs of rupees is a person who has actually earned that in the hard way. And I have come across a YouTube video where the so-called journalist is making an interview of this particular person, and this person is explaining how he is becoming rich. I don't see why police should not come in and see how we can recognize this particular criminal and book him immediately in some form, so that this person, first of all, should not feel proud of being a successful criminal, because that will motivate another 100 people to actually become criminals. And secondly, if he has done some mistake, he should be brought to book. Here, of course, even the government agencies are answerable, because sometimes when we bring it to the knowledge of the government that something is wrong, there is nobody there on the side of the government to actually act upon it. There are many such instances. People like us come across that, because I maintain a blog called navi.org, and whenever something bad comes to my notice, I immediately put it there on the web, and it becomes public knowledge. But when I say a particular crime has happened, it is not simply a public knowledge for the sake of actually increasing the TRP of the blog, but actually it is a notice to the government that you are sitting quiet and letting this crime happen. In fact, in one of the recent incidents, there was a person who was proudly announcing on his blog that he has hacked into a government website. I immediately said that you are boasting of what can be called as a cyber terrorist activity. And I wrote to the ministry, the CERTIN, everybody. But unfortunately, nobody else took notice of that. We say in law that any individual who comes across what we call as a cognizable crime is actually has a duty to bring it to the notice of the particular law enforcement agencies. But when we do that, if there is no response, then next time perhaps I would think twice why I should take the trouble of doing this. This is one of the reasons why I say that there are weaknesses on the side of law enforcement which needs to be somehow reduced. Of course, laws are evolving. As of now, India has a good law, and of course, it is being improved. But law enforcement is often enamored by the technology. They actually respect the technology criminals much more than the plight of the victims. And we must remember that the reason why cybercrime succeed is the criminal is sitting, is hiding somewhere and trying to commit a crime again and again, and he needs to succeed only once, whereas security personnel have to succeed every time. This is a kind of asymmetric warfare which we are on. But one thing we must remember is all cyber crimes are not sophisticated technology crimes. A few maybe, but not all. The few technology related crimes are something like which we may call as hacking. Hacking is an unauthorized access to a particular system. There are things like man in the browser, that when you are doing something on the browser, there is a virus or something which is on the back of the browser. So that is a kind of technology. There is ransomware which uses encryption. There are skimmers which are hardware devices which can skim the data of credit cards. There is something called denial of service attacks, which is a technical thing. There could be malware, which is a term which can be used for any virus. And in the AI scenario, we have got robots, and robots can also go rogue. These are all the technology related crimes. But beyond this, there are crimes which are not technology heavy. What we call as phishing is, and social engineering is just how good the person talks. Okay, that results in a crime being happen. And it happens because of ignorance. It happens because of negligence. It also happens because people think it is not my responsibility, why I should bother. It's out of a complacency. So if you look at phishing, basically phishing is something like a identity theft or trying to impersonate a person by showing himself as somebody other than what he is. That is the main aspect. We call that as phishing because the fraudster tries to spread his net very wide, and he is happy if only one or two people per day actually fall into his net. He may be contacting 10,000 people, 20,000 people every day through email. If one person comes back and this person can steal 4 5 lakhs from him, that is the income for the day. So that is why it is called phishing, phishing. Variations of phishing in terms of voice, we sometimes refer to as wishing. And when phishing is done with a focused approach on somebody, we also call it as spear phishing. Okay. Now, this sort of impersonation can be done on domain names. It can be done on the URLs. URL is the full name of a file with the file path. And then it can be done on emails. It can be done even in mobile numbers. For example, if you look at this particular domain name, anybody who looks at this thinks it is the domain of Axis Bank, which is a well-known bank. So if I click on this, I should go to Axis Bank, and maybe if the website gives me some offers of bank, I may even take it. But if you go deep into that, if you are able to see the URL displayed when I take my mouse here, you will see that this is not AXISBANK, this is actually AXLSBANK. But if somebody sees this link, we cannot expect that the common man will have such sharp eyes and such knowledge that wherever I is there or wherever A is there or some other character is there, it can be substituted without a with some similar looking character. Small a can similarly be substituted. So this I can be substituted with L when the rest of the characters are in capital letters. This is being done in many cases. ICICI Bank, you have got two I's there, and any one of them can be substituted by an L. So this is one of the way by which impersonation happens, and we cannot blame a person to be not able to recognize this. Then there is the URL phishing, where you take an example of something like this, www.bigbillionsales.amazon.com. Now, if there is another URL which says www.amazon.bigbillionsales.com, the question is, which is genuine, which is not genuine? Okay. Now, this requires a knowledge of how domain names are constructed. Again, this is not something which every bank customer should know, every member of the public should know. We cannot expect every member of public to hold a certificate in cyber security. So, in fact, this is also used in some kind of frauds. What is the difference between this and this is that this particular URL belongs to Amazon.com. That is what comes immediately on the left side of .com is the real domain. Within that, a subdomain has been created called Big Billion Sales. And therefore, this URL is bigbillionsales.amazon.com. It is owned by Amazon. So if you are doing business with Amazon, it is fine. But in this, the real domain is bigbillionsales.com. It is not Amazon. And they create today one subdomain called Amazon, tomorrow one subdomain called Flipkart, and they keep running their frauds. So how do we distinguish these two, and whether this kind of a knowledge is something which should be part of the awareness of our youngsters or even elderly people is something which we need to look at. Then we have got something like this. Let us say email shubham.agarwal@gmail.com, shubham.agarwal@gmail.com. It requires a very special eye to say that here there is one H, here there is no H. In fact, such frauds have happened earlier. There was one case in which ongc.com and ognc.com was used. That the OGNC was used by the fraudster, and a senior corporate executive who got an email from abc@ognc.com paid 170 crores of rupees as part of a business deal, which means that even educated corporate executives cannot make distinction of this sort of things. So what is that we are talking of as awareness? Awareness of public is not the end result of or the only solution. In fact, when you click any of these phishing websites, they lead to a particular website which is an exact replica of the real website. It is impossible for somebody to say that no, this is a fraudulent website, because the look and feel of that is exactly like a specific website. And you see how these people who are all actually corporate employees, okay, until this day, perhaps they were receiving a fat salary. You see the environment of their office. They have got computers, they have got beautiful chairs, and these are the kind of organizations which do this call center frauds or these frauds involving creation of false websites and so on. And it is being run as if it is a genuine corporate activity. Okay. But when they are caught, it is not just sitting on the floor. Look at the ignominy of these people, okay, lying on the floor and trying to hide their faces. And you look at this. What will be the reaction of their parents, okay, when they see their children for whom they have spent so much of money and made them educated indulge in this sort of an activity? And in fact, the parents will perhaps feel they should commit suicide. I think this is where I say that the ethics of the current generation is to be questioned. I feel that education people should think of how to actually address this particular situation. Okay. Now, there are also instances where phishing is done in the name of a known person. This particular incident happened long time back. You see here 2002. I have been in this field since around 1998. I myself got an email from Navi, and this was having a message which is related to cybersecurity, and it had a virus. Okay. Now, if this message goes to XYZ and it comes from Navi and it relates to cybersecurity, probably people will consider this as very reliable, and therefore the possibility of clicking on the link is very much high. And that is one of the ways that the success of phishing actually is increased. You have heard of defacement of website, where the website is front page is changed, something is put. But this again is something which is old. Today, what people do is they don't deface the website. Website will remain as it is. Okay. But behind the website, the code is changed, and in that code, they will introduce whatever virus or something which they would like to introduce. So the fraudsters have become very you can say intelligent. In fact, one of the Bank of India website was hacked like this, and the main page did not change. But whoever visited that Bank of India website, the website tried to download about 30 plus viruses. Some of them were keylogger viruses, and visiting the bank website itself was a risk. This is what we call as the risk of clicking on unknown links. And mobile apps and some software which we sometimes download as free software, unlicensed software, they are all sources of such drive-by download attack. Okay, adwares, that is softwares which have advertisements, and crypto mining software, they are some of the major ways by which people use this downloading of what appears to be a genuine file and putting some kind of a virus into it. So that is the reason why public should avoid downloading of any unlicensed software. And this is what I was telling, the tech support scam is another scam. This person is called the Cyber Singham. Okay, he is the police inspector, the DIG in Lucknow. You must have heard of him, Dr. Triveni Singh, who has singularly handled, I don't know how many, but number of these fraud cases he has busted. And in India, perhaps nobody has done as much of work in the cybercrime prevention as this person. He is in Lucknow, and you should perhaps use his services at some point of time. Now, this tech support scam is something where, for example, an email goes from a known company about something, some purchase which you have not made, and you immediately call back, and the callback number you take from Google where there is a fake number, and the fraudster answers from behind and says, I will help you how to resolve this particular mistake in order booking. And through conversation, he makes you install, let us say, in any desk kind of an application, takes over your computer or takes over your mobile, and then your entire banking money would have been taken away. When such things happen, I said earlier that the victim feels guilty. In fact, this was a case in Bangalore which happened some time back, where a housewife lost about 45 lakhs. Okay. Now, the entire family in this particular case was supporting this particular lady, saying that don't worry, we will manage somehow or something like that. But still, this middle-aged lady felt so guilty that she has let down the family, that she committed suicide. There are other cases where girls have committed suicide because of reputation harm and other things. Recently, this courier-related scams are very much in vogue. You may get a call saying that we are from FedEx, your parcel which you have booked has been seized and it is supposed to have narcotics. It contains your address, it contains your Aadhaar, etc. You are likely to face some kind of a problem of that. Then you say, no, I have not sent this thing. Then somebody there says, okay, we will try to sort it out. I will connect you to the cybercrime police station, and somebody else will come and say that I am a cybercrime person or something like that. And in the conversation, again, they somehow ensure that you are cheated out of your money. In one of these cases, I think in Delhi, 4.5 crores have been paid by one doctor, okay, lady doctor. And while she paid 4.5 crores, she never talked to his husband or somebody else. This is how these fraudsters manage the conversation. They are expert in manipulating people. This is what is called social engineering. Now, what we need to look at is, where did all this money go? This money cannot go from one bank account directly to the pocket of the fraudster. It has to go through another bank. And in the other bank, this fraudster should have had an account. And either he should go to ATM and withdraw the money, or transfer this money to another bank account, or sometimes to Bitcoins. Now, if you want the crimes to be stopped, you have to stop this other bank, which becomes a service provider to the fraudster. See, this is where our bank, for example, today we say Bharatpur or Mathura, the entire village is a fraud village. Okay, everybody does business only as fraud. Now, in those places, I don't understand how a bank can exist. If there is a bank there, it is keeping the accounts of all the fraudsters, and they are helping in the money laundering. I would like the Ministry of Home Affairs to raid this entire village, lock all the banks, and then confiscate all the bank accounts, and perhaps 90% of that money is actually fraud money. Now, this particular aspect of the intermediary like bank being held responsible was legally um, I mean, validated in one of the cases, which is called ICICI Bank, Vijayashankar versus ICICI Bank. This particular case was handled by me, and it went through adjudication. It went through the TD SAT. This is the order of the TD SAT. Subsequently, it went to the High Court, and after 3 times, the courts held in favor of the victim. I am not the victim. I only argued for the victim who had lost about 6 lakhs. Then the bank actually made the payment. Until that time, they were telling this customer, you gave away your password, you did not know, you are a chemical engineer, but you were not aware of this, you answered a phishing mail. We said, yes, we were negligent, but this is not something which everybody can understand. And what is the responsibility of the bank in making this fraudulent payment? Why did they make the payment? Why did they not discover that this was a fraudulent transaction? We weighed the negligence of the customer versus negligence of the bank, and the courts held that the negligence of the bank was much, much higher, and therefore they said bank should be held liable. So, okay. And Reserve Bank also has said recently, at least in 2017, they have issued a circular called Zero Liability Circular, and have said that in any such fraud, if you report it back within 3 days, then the bank should take all the liability and not the individual. But banks still contest that you have given away the OTP, you have given away the password, and in that case, please refer to the Vijayashankar's case. And also there is another similar case in SBI and other these things in Kerala, where the courts have held that despite negligence of the victim in handing over the password or even OTP, there is more to the security than this negligence, and therefore the bank should be held liable. Remember this. Tell somebody about your lawyer or something, or somebody about it, and then you may be able to get back the money. So from the banker's side, what I can say is that OTP security is insufficient. They should use what we security people call as adaptive authentication. That is, they have to make a real-time risk assessment of a transaction and then change the authentication method and escalate it. Suppose somebody is trying to draw money at the dead of the night, 11:50, then you should be able to see that this customer is a 70-year-old person, is unlikely to actually be awake even at that time. How did this particular transaction came, and that too not from the place where this particular person is residing, but somewhere in Nigeria, somewhere in Lucknow, Kanpur, or Guwahati. That is the risk assessment which the system has to make, and then stop the payment or take additional steps. This is what RBI has asked the banks to do, and many of the banks are not doing it. You have to quote these things when you try to recover the money from intermediary for their negligence. They can also use these virtual cards today. Some banks are saying that they are great by introducing the virtual cards. They should have done it long time back, and some banks had done it. And they have got control on limits. You have got a bank or credit card, you can put 25,000 per day limit. But why can't we put limit that the transaction should not happen after 6 o'clock, after 5 o'clock? I don't want transactions to happen at 12 o'clock in the night. Today, none of the banks have introduced a time control on the transactions. We don't want anytime, anywhere banking. We want a kind of technology not losing the security of the earlier manual days. Okay, so if I want, I should say that my bank should accept debits only from Bangalore, which is my place of residence. And it should accept only between 10 to 2. This was how banks were operating earlier. Now, if I want it to be changed, I should have the ability to open it out. Suppose I'm traveling to Delhi and I want it to be available at a later date. This control should be given to us. These are very simple security controls which banks can give and they are not giving. And that is where cybersecurity is failing. and insurance is another aspect which should be mandatory for the banks, and so that they don't have to pay money out of their pocket. Let them make insurance responsible for that. Then insurance people will ensure that security will automatically improve. Then interbank coordination is also today not there. So if you go and tell your banker that money has gone out of your bank, he does not immediately pick up the phone and talk to the other end banker and say that this reported transaction is a fraud, please stop transaction there, which is the account of the fraudster. If this is done, then half or more than half of the frauds would have been stopped in the nip of the bud. Then, of course, if the money has been withdrawn, immediately take police action at the destination, and then perhaps before the money is spent, you are able to collect the money, provided the destination bank has done proper KYC and it has got correct address of the particular person. Now, coming to technology related frauds, there is something called steganography. Say, for example, you might have heard of many instances where people will send a photograph and say, you please distribute it to 21 persons, you will get luck or something like that. There is a possibility that in such cases, steganographic code could be there on the back of the file, and it could act as a virus, it could act as a tracker, and it could have some information which is a coded message. In fact, Aishwarya Rai's photograph is supposed to have been used when our parliament was attacked. Okay, a terrorist exchanged some vital information with the exchange of that kind of photograph. So we must be aware of this so that stop spreading this kind of photographs. Then can we identify a spoofed email? Ordinary persons, I don't think it is easy. Of course, we say IP address could be an indicator. You can go to the header information and see the email IP address. But today, if you go to any Gmail and try to look at the IP address, you only get Google email, Google IP address, not anybody else. Google is substituting the fraudster's IP address and helping him to hide his identity and substituting its own ID. Similarly, when you go to what is called WHOIS inquiry for the domain name ownership, the registrars say that we are, for the sake of privacy, we are providing a cover to the domain name owner. We don't want anybody to know who is the domain name owner. We give a kind of a substitute for that. This means that the domain name registrar as well as the Gmail are protecting the ID of the fraudster. And I think by this, they are actually abetting the crime. See, if I have received an email from XYZ and I ask Google, please tell me the source originating IP, there is no reason why Google should say, no, this is privacy of my sender customer and I don't want to give it to you. In fact, I am also a customer of Gmail because I hold a Gmail address and I am receiving the email. Google should respond to that. This is the law, but nobody is asking Google to actually follow this law. In fact, recently TRA has said that in mobile transactions, we will try to provide the name of the caller, just like in the case of Truecaller, through the ISP, which is having the correct ID of the SIM card owner. Similarly, that has not yet been implemented because definitely the mobile service providers are not in favor of this, because the more fraud calls happen, the benefit is to the intermediaries. So why obscenity is not removed from internet? Because ISPs actually thrive on obscenity on the internet. If tomorrow obscenity stops, then the part of their business goes down. If you look at the Twitter, which has now become X, earlier Twitter had a lot of fake news. Now, Elon Musk has come and has put some controls and the fake news has reduced. And because of that, the traffic on Twitter has come down. So business-wise, Elon Musk must have suffered a loss. So for protecting their money, this is what I call as greediness of the business. They encourage the fake news, they encourage obscenity. And similarly, when TRA suggested this for the mobile service providers, they have not yet implemented it. It could have been done overnight. They have not done that. I want a similar thing to be also done for Gmail. Gmail also should be able to take the KYC information and then perhaps provide that to the receiver of the email, at least on request. Okay, if not openly, at least on request. The other aspect which we need to worry about is how do we destroy the criminal infrastructure? Cryptocurrency is one such infrastructure. Unless you kill this currency like Bitcoin, you will not reduce crimes. Dark web is another aspect. It should be blocked. It can be blocked. People say, no, it cannot be blocked. I don't agree with that. It can be done. Use of AI has to be regulated. Crime as a service should never be allowed. Then these physical centers, Bharatpur, Mathura, Nu, etc., they need to be attacked like a terrorist center, like your, say, Balkot kind of an attack. You should attack these things. How do we allow these kind of villages? In one of the villages, I think in Nu, they chased away the police who had arrested some villagers for crime. So if the mafia is taking over the village, I think there is something highly wrong. Now, India has a great law, Information Technology Act 2000. In fact, today is an anniversary of SESAR, 27th October 2009. ITA 2000 was made much, much stronger with an amendment. CERTIN is a government body, and intermediaries are expected to follow due diligence, and social media intermediaries are expected to have verified accounts. These are some of the salient features of the law. So there is nothing to blame on the law. There is everything to blame on the implementation. Part of it is technology. Technology also, I don't say it is inefficient. It is not being used properly. There is encryption. There is digital signature. There is something called pseudonymization. Geotagging and RFID cards can be used. So there are a lot of things which can be used. Even in an ATM, you can have face recognition to reduce any fraudulent withdrawals. So technology is not to be fully blamed. Then law is reasonably sufficient. If we want, we can actually have a control. In fact, the MHA has recently introduced one system of a telephone number called 1930 and a website called cybercrime.gov.in, which is a centralized cybercrime reporting website. You file your cybercrime here, an FIR can be generated, and this portal will send the FIR to the jurisdictional police station so that the filing of the complaint becomes very easy. It doesn't mean that you will get back the money, but if you file a complaint within, let us say, 1 hour of a fraud or something like that, there is a possibility that the payment which is going in transit can be restricted. Okay, but at some point of time, we need to ensure that intermediaries do not become the problems for cybercrime control. They are presently not assisting the government properly. They should be made to do that. And special care should be taken in respect of gaming websites, dating websites, matrimonial websites, job sites, investment sites, and sites which create addictiveness. Virtual reality is going to make our things more difficult. This is generally the information which I wanted to share. We have come to the end of our time schedule. In case you have any questions and there is time, I will answer it. Otherwise, we will close this session.
So I request all the participants, if you have a question for sir, please you can raise your hand. You can also type in the question in the chat window and we can discuss the questions here. To raise your hand, there is an option on your screen which says reactions. Please click on that and you can raise your hand. I will unmute you and you can ask your question. So, sir, there is one question here. It says that last year, one of my friends' savings account in Canara Bank saw a withdrawal of 40,000 transferred to USA. It happened with many of the customers of a particular branch. On complaining at available platforms, money could not be recovered till date. What might have happened and who is responsible for recovery of hard-earned
There
money?
is no doubt that bank should take the responsibility for this. The process for that is not bank ombudsman. It is a process called adjudication. Every state has got an IT secretary. IT secretary is the adjudicator. He has got the powers to make inquiries and come up with a decision. If you can prove that there was negligence of Canara Bank and there was no negligence, if you say several people have been affected, probably it's a systemic error. And the bank should have taken the responsibility, and the bank can itself cover it by cyber insurance. Okay, this sort of a thing cannot be fought individually. This Umashankar's case, I fought for 14 years. Okay, I don't recommend others to do that. And it also happened because of a peculiar situation where one of the courts, which was the appellate tribunal, got shut for 8 years. So out of the 14 years, 8 years, if you remove, it still took 6 years for coming to a conclusion in three courts, that is adjudicators court, then the appellate tribunal court, and then the high court. Each place, it took 2 years in adjudication. After this closure was sorted out, the TD SAT actually sorted it out within about 9 months, and then the high court took about 1.5 years. So in an ideal situation, in 3 to 4 years, you should be able to get your money, even if you have to fight it fully. Otherwise, using the RBI's zero liability case, within 1 or 2 months, you should be able to get the money back. Ombudsman will come in when there is a service deficiency. Okay, here we are talking of a crime. Ombudsman will not sit in judgment of a crime and look at evidence and other things. So therefore, the correct forum for cyber crimes is the adjudicator.
Thank you, sir. So there is one more question. Jyoti Trivedi wants to know that without sharing the OTP, just with the help of Aadhaar number, can there be a cyber crime that can happen?
There are many banks who will say that they will open accounts online. So Aadhaar can be used, but to use an Aadhaar, there will be a OTP. Okay. One is Aadhaar, you should always keep it locked. That is one thing. You can go to UIDA website and lock it. Like in the olden days, we used to lock STD kind of a thing. So that whenever it is required, you open it, use it, and then immediately afterwards, you close it. Now, then if it is used, OTP will come. The way OTP can be misused is that there can be something called SIM cloning. That is, a person would have either taken a duplicate SIM so that he will be getting the OTP, or he would have put some Trojan into your mobile so that he will be getting the copy of the particular OTP. There are many apps which will say, I want permission to read your SMS. Now, all those apps which read your SMS are a risk because OTPs are today sent through SMS, and therefore OTP is not considered an ideal security provision. Okay, so a combination of an open Aadhaar, which is not closed in the UIDA website, and then the SIM cloning could lead to the use of Aadhaar for committing frauds. Okay.
So thank you so much for a very informative session. There were a lot of takeaways for all of us, and you shared some of the real life examples with us. So thank you once again for taking out time for all of us, for our audiences. And I would like to thank all the participants for joining in and attending the session.